Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at how to set up a flex fuel sensor in our Mtune software. Now, the flex fuel sensor is going to be needed to represent the ethanol content for the Motec in order to do a flex fuel based tune. There also is an added benefit from adding an ethanol content sensor or content sensor to your fuel system to be able to report the fuel temperature to the Motec. Now, both are needed in order to do a flex fuel based tune, but the fuel temperature would be needed regardless. Rather than estimating the fuel temperature, we can improve our transient fuel modeling or fuel fill modeling based on knowing what our fuel temperature is going to be. We also can just improve the general fueling calculations with our Motec. The more data that we can feed it, such as fuel pressure or fuel temperature, we always want to do that, regardless if we plan on running a flex fuel based tune or not. The cost of an ethanol content sensor is relatively inexpensive, anywhere between $80 to $100. You can pick one up. You get a true Continental GM style sensor. So every time I'm doing a Motec install, I'm always utilizing an ethanol content sensor. Again, regardless if I'm planning on doing a flex fuel based tune or not, simply because I can get that fuel temperature input to my Motec without tying up another available analog temp input. Let's go here and take a look at how we're going to configure our flex fuel sensor first, and then we'll talk about setting up our fuel temperature portion from the flex fuel sensor, because it actually is going to be broadcasting both the ethanol content and the temperature all in one output. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here, going from the workbook I provided for our training course, you can see here we're on the upper portion of the screen, my workbooks, we're going to jump in here to our setup. Now under setup, we're going to move here from our basic setup and move across here into our advanced inputs. If we take a look here in our advanced inputs, we're going to go down here and select the fuel composition sensor resource. Now this is where the Motec is a little bit different than other systems for configuring and setting up a flex fuel sensor. Typically, if we're working with another standalone, such as Haltech, Link, Max ECU, we're going to be using a digital input for our flex fuel sensor signal, because the signal from the flex fuel sensor will be a frequency, 50 Hertz representing pure petrol, and 150 Hertz representing pure ethanol. And then anywhere between those two, in the 50 to 150 Hertz range, will be a linear lookup based on the ethanol content. So we're feeding a frequency signal into the Motec, and we'd expect to use a digital input. The way we have to configure this, though, is a little bit different. Let's take a look at this. So moving over here into our sensor resource, we're going to go into our drop-down menu, and we're going to be looking for our digital inputs. But what you'll notice here, a little bit different, is that we see our universal digital inputs all listed here. And then we have a hybrid A and a hybrid B. This is where things are a bit different. Now, my particular box here, I've wired my flex fuel sensor into my universal digital 3. But in this case, I'm going to be choosing my universal digital 3 hybrid A. The A option translates a frequency to a voltage lookup table to be able to tell the Motec then what the ethanol content is going to be. Now, if we choose the option B here, it's going to be then changing the duty cycle from a signal into another voltage reading and then allowing some kind of translation table there. Because we're using this particular setup here, setting up a flex fuel sensor, and we're going to be inputting a frequency signal, we choose the option A to whatever universal digital input we've wired into the Motec. So in this case, I'm using universal digital 3. That's my particular digital input that I've wired the signal wire from my flex fuel sensor into. I'm going to select that. Then we have a fuel composition sensor calibration. Normally here, we're going to go ahead and set this to this option right here, which is going to be the Continental GM sensor. They all have the same calibration scale. So what you'll find is we don't have to do any manual calibration, but we're going to go back to that in here in just 1 second. Now, I've selected this. We can see here the fuel composition sensor diagnostic delay here is set at 500 milliseconds. The voltage filter here is set at 0, and the voltage reference should be absolute. Now, what I have over here on the right screen in our time plot window, we have fuel composition sensor %, and notice that there's no registration or reading. We have to take another step here in order for this to start to work. We have to go in here to the fuel composition sensor digital decode resource and select this as our digital 3. We're not going to have a hybrid option.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.